and hopefully people have had something of a break, although as Dan was saying, the life of a councillor and even the life of a lecturer continues despite holidays and other things, and important so. So welcome back, everybody. Denise, amongst others, sends her apologies and has asked if I'll chair the meeting, so I will do. We've got quite a lot to get through today, and David Haskins is going to help me to make sure that not only do we give as much chance as we can to discuss the project, but also we achieve all the various approvals or otherwise along the way. So I'm just checking everybody can hear me properly, because I know the internet's been a bit of a challenge today. So unless I hear otherwise, and maybe people will go on mute, and if we do get a bit of instability, perhaps go off camera. And I will try and bring people in, and perhaps if we can use a show of physical hands rather than electronic hands, I'll make sure I bring people in as much as we can. So just to complete the apologies for absence, also apologies from Councillor McBride from Kirklees and from Jonathan Pryor, Councillor Pryor from Leeds. I believe Andrew Waller is joining us from York, but I don't see him as yet. And welcome to all our officer colleagues. Declarations of disposable pecuniary interests. Does anybody need to make any declarations that we aren't already aware of, or any new declarations? If so, perhaps they can indicate with a show of hands and I'll bring them in. Councillor Scullion.
Not entirely sure that it's needed, and Councillor Waller has now left the committee, but membership of the Yorkshire and Humberside Regional Flooding and Coastal Committee.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm not sure you do need to, but let's for good order, let's have these things in. I'm not sure there are any exempt items, are there, Ben? So we don't need to worry about that. Can I move to agenda item 4 in the minutes of the last meeting, which I wasn't present at, but a number of people on the call were present at? Do they represent an accurate record of the debate, discussion, decisions made at that meeting? If so, can I take them as being approved? Perhaps a thumbs up would be helpful from those on the call, and particularly those who were at the meeting. Okay, so thank you for that. So we're going to move to agenda item 5, which is the capital programme update, which David Haskins is going to lead on. But before passing over to David, just to remind people that in the summer of 2014, and with subsequent rounds, we secured over £500 million in terms of local growth funding for economic and related projects, and a further 600 million over a 20-year period for transport, the West Yorkshire Plus Transport Fund, coupled with the £350 million of European Structural Investment Funds, quite a sizable amount of funding from a standing start. And it's pleasing to see that not only have we made a lot of progress, and Dave will intimate now we're in the last year of the local growth fund, albeit with other funds coming along, which we're going to talk about, that we recently were advised that the amount withheld from every LEP across the country, that amount has now been, has been released to us in full, and in some parts of the country that those funds are still being withheld whilst government debates and discusses capacity and capability to deliver. But in our case, that money's been released to us so that we will have the full fat funding to deploy in 2021 and beyond. So with those opening words, Dave, perhaps I can hand to you to go through a little bit of the detail that puts some proper flesh on those rather sketchy bones of mine.
Okay, I'll try my best to cover what's in the report here. There's a couple of issues, well, items, parts to the report really. One is around reporting on the performance to date in terms of expenditure against each of the lines, as you can see in table 1. also be introducing the new funding programmes, of which the Getting Building Fund will be covered further on in the agenda, as there'll be more detail around that being brought forward, and also Brownfield Housing Fund scheme, which is a new one as well, and that will be covered through a project approval in a later item in the agenda. Firstly, looking at Table 1. You can see the budget forecasts against the in-year forecasts. They look like they're down, but they aren't actually down that much. We've actually, the Getting Building Fund and Brownfield Housing Fund are on top of the 309 million figure you can see at the bottom of the table, taking us up to a 326 million spend forecast for the whole year. The areas that are down on the spend in terms of the in-year forecasts are around the West Yorkshire Transport Fund, the Leeds Public Transport Investment Programme. Much of that expenditure relates to either COVID or other extenuating circumstances relating to issues like the HIF scheme in York, for instance, being announced later than we were anticipating, therefore the spend not going out of the door. Having said all of that, considering we're in a challenging time of project delivery, I know from the transport schemes I'm involved in, there have been some quite significant challenges around the supply chains. Although I think it's fair to say you'll see from the number of schemes coming forward for approval today, there's a lot of work still moving forward at a real pace, and that shouldn't be underestimated in terms of how quickly we are moving on expenditure here going forward. The good news, I suppose, around the growth deal expenditure, as you said, is government have recognised and put the money out of the door to pay up on that in very simple terms. We are on track in terms of, we had the recent growth deal review against the transport fund schemes, and we're on track to deliver against what was set out in that review. So things are going well. And I think it's fair to say on things like the Leeds Public Transport Investment Programme, we're still in a situation of over-programming as we move towards what is quite a challenging time as programmes come to a close, and you have to hit the expenditure almost on the nail as much as possible. Discussions have taken place with Department for Transport around how some schemes can, if they're into contract, can move forward into the next financial year, and that's been agreed now. And we have forecasts for expenditure to deliver the projects as we did indeed say we would. Where there is over-programming, because of the flexibilities we now have with our various pots and future funding streams, there are opportunities for some of those projects which were over-programmed to be picked up in a shovel-ready manner, as in the same way as Getting Building Fund has. We have a good pipeline coming forward, and when opportunities do arise, we'll be very, very well placed to take advantage of them in the eyes of the government. I think that's the main things I wanted to say about the report. As I say, the Getting Building Fund's really good news. £52.6 million package been awarded to West Yorkshire. And the amount of money that's been awarded to the North as a whole has been very, very encouraging. I think we'd like to see that set a benchmark for future expectations in those areas about the balance of funding. And the Brownfield Housing Fund, equally £67 million approved through that as well. So we've got a lot of really, really good projects on the go, and we're on track.
And that's before devolution. So thank you, David. I just want any comments, any questions from colleagues before we move on and just note the recommendation, which is basically to note the report. Anybody want to add anything? I'm scanning the screen, doesn't appear so. I think all I'd like to do with your forbearance colleagues is, on behalf of this committee, to send through Dave and Andrew our thanks for the enormous efforts, particularly in recent times, of our colleagues in what might have thought only a few years ago to be mission rather impossible, and we've made it mission very possible, and we are grateful, all of us, and hopefully the 2.3 million people in West Yorkshire that benefit in whole or in part from the various things that have happened to date. So thank you for that. So we will move, and thank you for that segue, Dave, into the Getting Building Fund, and I think Liz Courtney is going to just share with us again further success on projects, and also linking to the fact that these are agreed projects, and also our expectation in terms of when the money will be be deployed in 21 and 22. I should add that rather uniquely, initially, we not only bid for physical things, infrastructure and the like, but we also bid for a continuation of the business growth programme into 22, so as to continue the grant and support of SMEs and others right across the city region. At first, that was sort of pushed back on, said, well, no, this is about physical things. And we said, yeah, but we need to have businesses to go into these physical things. We need, we need people to be, trained, etc. And we want to encourage, and as a consequence, we got the full allocation we asked for. And I think others followed suit when they were suggested that maybe they should think a bit like us. So again, thanks to colleagues for actually pushing the envelope a little bit. So Liz, over to you.
Thanks, Roger. Good afternoon, Roger and councillors. Short overview of the report. As Roger said, we went through quite a challenging few weeks, and big thanks to partners who pulled all the information together with us. We gave government a core plus and a core plus scenario, to be then told on the 1st of July what the award was, which was £52.6 million. We went back to partners and pulled together the 15 priority projects that are shovel ready to go. We are currently working with partners to get a programme together to ensure that we fulfil the requirements of the GBF, and that's around ensuring that all of the spend is out of the door by the 31st of March 2022. As you will see, there's 15 quite big variety of projects, and we're looking for development costs as part of this programme. You'll have seen on this report and on the previous one, there's quite a challenging amount of spend this year of £13.5 million, and development costs will help us to build capacity within the project teams to ensure that we've got some support to pull forward those business cases as fast as we possibly can. As you'll understand, they've been shovel-ready projects, so some of them are fairly well advanced already, but there is some short-term kind of capacity challenges in order to get the business cases through. So the development costs will help us to support projects to bring those business cases forward as soon as we can. We will then set up a programme to ensure that we get the FBC pluses through as soon as possible. It's probably unlikely that they'll come through by the end of this year, but hopefully by early in the start of 21-22, we will need all of those FBC pluses in for us to achieve the £52.6 million spend.
Thank you, Liz. And I just should share with council colleagues that our core bid was just a shade under or shade over, and I can't remember which, Liz, 37 million. So we got more than the baseline we asked. And just to, again, share for the benefit of those joining this call who weren't on the pre-meet, Dave's point about the North doing proportionally well out of the Getting Building Fund. A number of us are saying to people in the centre, this 40% that's allocated to the North of the Getting Building Fund, we want to use that as a baseline for any future allocation, CSR otherwise, to the North and our part of it in particular. So I guess the thing that, and I'll open up for some questions, will be for colleagues on this call to check in back at the rank, so to speak, that there is the real capacity within the district partners to help, with us in the CA to deliver these. And if not, let's red light that early, and then we can maybe do something to support, because of all of the stresses and strains our partners have suffered in terms of cuts, etc. So shall I open it up for comments or questions? Jane?
Thank you, Chair. A comment as much as a question, really. And you're absolutely right to flag up the question of capacity and supply chain. But in some ways, I think this selection of 15 schemes, actually, we've all learned a lot over the recent years in terms of making sure that we can deliver. And I actually think we've got a reputation in the Combined Authority for delivering. And I think people constrained, they didn't go for, the moon and the stars as well. They went for things that they could actually deliver within that timescale. So I think it does stand up as really quite a solid programme. That's not to say that there are not things beyond our control. We speak as Calderdale, of course, who get flooded on a regular basis and have to deal with the infrastructure problems that causes. And of course, supply chain, leaving the European Union, weather, etc. But nonetheless, I think we have actually been very realistic in West Yorkshire. And I think that's one of the reasons why the government have actually made this settlement, because we have got a reputation for delivering, for spending carefully and delivering.
Yeah, I mean, I in a wider context, refer to the substance of our economy and our people, rather than perhaps how other places present their form, because I've always of the view that substance is greater than form. But anyway, anybody else want to comment on any of these projects? I don't know whether Alex, there's a couple from Bradford, etc. If not, I'll move to the recommendation, but just pause there momentarily. Alex, did you want to come in?
I think obviously we've spoken about the projects a few times. Obviously, really pleased to see us get that amount in, and obviously pleased to get some Bradford projects moving, but also for the city region as well. But happy to crack on, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I'm particularly pleased that we're able to crack on with the EZs, that the employment zones in Bradford and Wakefield, because I'm sure that'll help further. But actually to see the funding distributed quite widely across the city region rather than being necessarily concentrated. So unless anybody wants to add any further comments, can I draw your attention to the recommendation at para 9.1 on page 20? And I won't read them all out individually. I'll just seek my thumbs up or a show of hands that we're happy to approve those series of recommendations, as I said, at para 9.1 on page 20. Looks like we are. Yes, thank you. Okay. So I think we're going to move on now. And I think this is where it might get slightly complicated, Dave, won't it, in terms of going through the various approvals we need to go through. So thank you, Liz, by the way, for the getting building fund, capital spending project approvals. I'm going to hand to you, Dave. And as I said, because we want to try and do it by funding source, it may not necessarily completely fit with the programme of the papers, but I'm going to rely on you and my own dexterity, hopefully, to make sure we go through everything and give it sufficient and adequate airing. David.
Sure. Okay, this item's the capital spending and project approvals report, and I think it's fair to say, as far as I've seen, it's probably the longest report we've ever done in terms of capital approvals, which to committees is either positive or negative, depending which way you look at it. In terms of how
wondered why I'd got the chairing job.
Having said that, it certainly it indicates to me, at least, that the volume of projects that we are bringing through now and working our way through the approvals processes moving forward to delivery is substantial. We've got 15 projects here for approval as part of this report. I won't say much more at the beginning. We can talk a bit beyond as a item further on about climate emergency. We'll look at how we're looking at the integrated clean growth issues around projects, which I think is really highly relevant in terms of the way we work and the way we do business these days. And also, of course, we've had, as already alluded to, mentioned the impact of COVID on developing projects, which hasn't necessarily slowed down a lot of the work at the early development stages, but certainly as you're moving into delivery has been some challenges around timescales. I think the bit which is also mentioned in 2.2 is the big unknown, is what the impact of COVID. We have a number of transport projects here, what the impact of COVID will be in the future on future travel behaviour. And as yet, there's no guidance from government, as you'd expect, as to the way that they think that might be in the future. But that's certainly something that we work internally on challenging projects as they're coming forward, and so to stress testing them to make sure that they are fit for purpose against a range of various scenarios. without further ado, I think I'll pass on now. What we're going to do, we're going to get Fiona to introduce the Transforming Cities Fund schemes, of which there are a number for approval. And as part of this, we thought it'd be helpful for the councillors to get a bit of a wider overview of where we're up to on Transforming Cities Fund, having been through quite a period of mobilisation. Now, hoping this all works well technologically, Fiona's going to share her screen, which is a short presentation. So we're hoping everyone will be able to see this, and we're hoping her, I would say Wi-Fi holds up, but whatever she's got supporting her at the moment holds up. Over to you, Fiona.
Thank you, Dave. I have error message saying host disabled participant screen sharing. So unless that can be rectified, I will just go through the presentation as it is on my screen, if that's okay. Okay. I'll try and share my screen and see if it works. If I can get the presentation up while you're talking, but I'll let you start, I think. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So as Dave said, I'm going to try and introduce all the Transforming Cities schemes through this presentation, and then summarise the approvals at the end to try and kind of get through that. So I'll just provide a brief overview of the programme and where we're at, provide summaries of the different schemes. So the schemes in Bradford, 4 packages, Kirklees, 2 packages, Calderdale, 2 packages, and there's 1 package that covers the whole of West Yorkshire. And as I say, I will provide the recommendations and approvals and funding at the end as a summary. Oh, Dave looks like he's started to share screen. Something happening, is it? Yes. Okay. Is it up yet? I can't see it.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay. Just say to move to next screen when you want to. Okay.
Okay. If you can move to the next.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, if you can move to the next screen, Dave, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, so I think you've previously, just to recap, the TCF programme is delivering transformational change to our infrastructure. It is funded through 317 million from the DFT, plus local funding to deliver against our ambition, against the higher scenario. So if you recall, the bid to DFT covered 3 different scenarios, a low, a core and a high. The 317 represented the low plus a little bit more, but we have an ambition to deliver against our high scenario, and Combined Authority recently approved to utilise the devolution gain share funding to facilitate that. There's 22 packages of schemes within the overall programme, which is working towards approximately 30 to 35 individual projects that will start coming through the assurance framework. It's a mixture of projects that are focused on public transport and a lot of active travel, so walking and cycling, and it's delivering on our corridors in our places, so our towns and cities, and also delivering improvements to our public transport hubs and interchanges. I think the focus of the programme is around our objectives of inclusive and clean growth, so it's around connecting areas of deprivation and through sustainable and active travel, so looking to reduce our carbon emissions and improving air quality, particularly in kind of town and city centres. The programme looks to build on the existing delivery of our West Yorkshire Plus Transport Fund, and also the Connecting Leeds Public Transport Investment Programme. So it kind of, in a number of areas, it kind of starts to plug some gaps in the network and starts to kind of provide that full connectivity across the region. The programme is being delivered by our local authority partners, and also a number of schemes directly by the Combined Authority. And DFT have given us a challenging timescale to deliver against their funding of March 2023. However, with the more flexibility with the local devolution funding, we may start to push that envelope for delivery beyond that 2023 deadline. Where we are within the programme is that we are pretty much there with the vast majority of the packages having completed decision point 2 and now working on their outline business cases. And today we are looking at 8 packages which basically will result in approximately 12 different schemes or projects. So there'll be 12 different outline business cases or full business cases as they come forward. The activity is commencing now. You may recall we had an element of programme level development funding approved in June this year. So partners are still progressing with these schemes whilst these strategic outline cases are coming through the approvals process. If you just move on to the next screen. So this slide just reflects on the expected outcomes and delivery against the programme. So as I mentioned, you know, a key point of the programme is around reducing our CO2 emissions, improving connectivity by public transport and active travel. So it just kind of reflects on the expected outcomes from the programme. If you could move on to the next slide. And we will facilitate that through the infrastructure that will be delivered, including 2 new park and rides, a new rail station, foot and cycle bridges, as I mentioned previously, high quality cycling and walking infrastructure, and improved rail station gateways. Next slide. So I'll just briefly introduce each of the packages that are being considered for approval today. So within Bradford, within the overall programme, there are 4 packages in Bradford. The first package focuses on Bradford city centre. It's looking to provide improved connectivity across the city centre, particularly for those on foot and on bike, and starts to kind of build those connections across the city to previous delivery of cycling and walking infrastructure, as well as providing for kind of configuration of the bus services within the city centre, to a couple of key junctions to improve journey times and accessibility for buses at Jacob's Well roundabout, and also Bridge Street. So it kind of it's a fairly fundamental remodelling of Bradford city centre and how it operates, and that's also to make it a much kind of more pleasant environment, taking the traffic out of that core city centre area. The second package is a new bus-based park and ride and expressway. So by expressway, it's improvements and upgrades of the bus priority measures that currently are on Manchester Road to provide a 2-way bus priority there, and a dedicated park and ride facility to the south of the city, close to the M606, to facilitate people to park and ride to travel into Bradford city centre. The third package is the transformation of access to Bradford interchange, so the provision of a new and improved access point for people arriving on foot off Hall Ings, so that connects through to some key development sites in the city, providing much more pleasant and hospitable access into the interchange, whilst also improving journey times for those arriving by foot from that area of the town. So that's that scheme. And then the final scheme in Bradford is provision of West Bradford Cycle Superhighway. So this one, in previous delivery, there's been a cycle superhighway through to the east towards Leeds, to the north into Shipley, and then provision both through the South Bradford Park and Ride Expressway and previous delivery to the south of the city. This will provide that final kind of axis into the west, so up Thornton Road, to provide improvements to connectivity from those areas of deprivation in that quadrant of the city. Also, it will pass through the education quarter, so providing those links to the university and college sites into the city centre. So the schemes collectively provide improvements to sustainable and active travel opportunities to and within Bradford city centre. Whilst the schemes can and may be delivered independently, they all complement each other, and their collective benefits to the city kind of are greater than the sum of the parts, and they will complement the proposed clean air zone in the city to provide that comprehensive approach. Do you want to move on to the next slide?
Shall we just pause there, Fiona, if I may? Just pause. Do you want to add anything, Alex, to any of the comments already made as regards the Bradford scheme?
No, thank you, Fiona. That was a really good overview there. Obviously, it's a really exciting package. They all link together and in the wider kind of vision for the city centre and the district as a whole, really. And you can see how they match with the Get Building Fund and those schemes as well will sort of support that. The other thing I'd add as well is one of the benefits of the West Bradford Cycle Superhighway is it'll go towards Thornton, which then gets it closer to the Great Northern Railway Trail, which in turn goes down to Queensbury as well. So we can start to see the development of a network that we hope can one day incorporate Queensbury Tunnel, which we've also made some progress on working with the combined authority. So you can really see that kind of wider strategic cycle network starting to develop as well.
Thank you, Alex. And just to check in with other colleagues, Jane and Darren, as to whether they've got any comments to make, or otherwise, if not, we can move on. Okay.
Please move on.
Okay, let's move on. Thank you, Darren. Fiona.
Okay, thank you. So the next packages are in Kirklees district. There are 2 packages being considered today at decision point 2. The first package is focused on Dewsbury Town Centre, and it will contribute to the regeneration plans for the town. It will be delivering a range of walking and cycling improvements on the ring road and in the town centre itself, better connecting key employment sites and education sites. The second of the schemes within that package will be a redevelopment of Dewsbury bus station. This scheme will enhance the customer experience for passengers, including particularly around perceptions of safety and security that may be an issue in that particular location. Complementary to that, there'll be improved access for buses through the Aldham's Road junction, and that will improve safety at that junction and also journey times for buses. The package, that particular package, will increase bus and active travel and reduce emissions from private vehicles, improving air quality within Dewsbury. The second of the packages in Kirklees is along the A638 corridor. There'll be a series of interventions there between Dewsbury and Cleckheaton. This is a key route with poor air quality, congestion and passing through areas of deprivation. It's also a key corridor for growth with new homes and employment planned along that corridor. This package will split into 2 particular projects. The redevelopment of WY&YIC bus hub, which will provide new opportunities for bus interchange in that location, provide additional capacity for buses to interchange, enhanced waiting facilities and also passenger information. And the second element to that package is in corridor improvements to increase access to bus. So, for example, widening footways, improving the bus stops and facilities, as well as bus priority along the corridor, and also providing improvements to cycling and walking, including links and enhancements to the Spen Valley Greenway, which is an existing facility. That package will increase the uptake of cycling, walking and bus use, and will in turn reduce carbon emissions and improve air quality. These packages in Kirklees have had a range of funding allocations in each of the 3 Transforming Cities funding scenarios, and Kirklees have indicated an element of local match funding will be available for the Dewsbury package. I'll come to the funding scenarios and costs later on in the presentation. Let's move on to the next one. Thank you.
Amy, just pause. Anybody want to add any comments on Kirklees before we go to Calderdale? I don't think it's necessary. Just give people a chance. Okay, let's move on.
Okay, thank you. So there are 2, there's 1 package and 1 project being considered for Calderdale today. The package is a Brighouse and Elland access to rail stations package. Effectively, there's 2 distinct schemes here. There is the Elland scheme will enhance the scope of the current Elland station and access package, which is funded from the West Yorkshire Plus Transport Fund, and we effectively will be taking the TCF elements and adding it into that scheme for delivery as one project. The Brighouse scheme has been developed through the local cycling and walking infrastructure planning process, which is a DFT endorsed and promoted process for route development and prioritisation for walking and cycling. This scheme's in much earlier stages of development, and it's anticipated that it will actually be aligned to the A641 West Yorkshire Plus Transport Fund scheme, which is currently being developed to outline business case. So Calderdale are keen for that to be seen as, again, one kind of holistic approach to planning in the Brighouse area. The two schemes will deliver improved connectivity to employment and housing and support Calderdale's ambition for growth in housing and employment in that particular area, whilst also delivering against sustainability and carbon objectives through providing access by sustainable and active modes. This particular package, the Brighouse and Elland package, was only funded in the higher scenario, and the Elland obviously is supported through match funding from the Transport Fund because it forms part of that wider package. It is worth noting that Calderdale have prioritised the available funding for this particular package of schemes in the higher scenario solely towards the Elland scheme for delivery. The rationale for this is that the scheme elements are further progressed and have, would be delivered as part of that scheme, which is currently developing its full business case. And they also provide potentially a higher level of benefit as has been assessed at this stage. The Brighouse scheme will continue to be developed and funding will be sought for delivery of these elements, potentially over a longer time period.
Yeah, thank you, Fiona. Jane, was there anything you wanted to add?
I won't say anything about Halifax because that's coming later at the bus station. And Fiona's absolutely right in terms of the prioritisation of this. We've got the railway station coming in at Elland, which is great, and it's beside a very large and successful industrial estate, which is great. But there is a disconnect between the town of Elland, the formerly thriving market town of Elland, and the new railway station. And we're based on, there's a supermarket on the main route between the two, as well as some really quite intrusive roads. And as part of our plans to try and make all 6 of our market towns thriving and attract new housing and new development there, we're very keen that the station is part of that, really, rather than it just being seen as slightly out of town near industrial estate, but not actually connected. If you think about towns where you actually get off the train and you immediately see which way to go. We've all been in stations where you come out of the station and you have no idea which direction the town centre is in. And we're very keen that we link walking and cycling and make the station accessible to people in the town, and indeed around the canal and river amenities there as well. So really, this is absolutely essential, and it's coming soon. The station's coming soon, so that's why we've prioritised it.
Thank you, Jane. Just before we move to the summary of the funding and approvals, Fiona, I just wonder whether Kim Groves, who obviously led on this piece of work, whether you wanted to add any comments, Kim. Not necessarily unless you wish to, but I thought I'd give you the opportunity, Kim.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's fantastic to see this moving so quickly, and it will be a huge benefit to the public transport system, and it plays into our connectivity strategy. I think at the last investment committee we had North Yorkshire, we've got West Yorkshire, so you start to visualise that transformational picture. 317 million will make a significant difference. It's one of the the biggest infrastructure things we've probably tackled in West Yorkshire, and hopefully we'll get best practice as schemes progress, because I think it's really important that if we can gather best practice, and it will accelerate any of these schemes that we share it. And I'll leave it there, Chair.
Thank you, Kim. Right, over to you, Fiona, again.
Okay, thank you. So the final package from the Transforming Cities Fund for consideration today is network navigation across West Yorkshire. This particular package builds builds upon and will roll out the existing network navigation project that has been come out of the Leeds Public Transport Investment Fund into the rest of West Yorkshire along the core bus network. So the benefits of that scheme that's kind of coming, I think it may be coming forward for full business case today, or has done recently. So that will be rolled out across West Yorkshire, and it will be utilising the development work that's been completed for that previous project, which means it can come forward quite quickly and deliver quite quickly within the overall programme. The scheme will deliver against the objectives of the West Yorkshire bus strategy, and feedback from the consultation on the bus strategy has helped to inform the approach for this project and has kind of helped to shape the approach. So the aims of the package is to improve the availability and usability of bus service information, enabling users to easily access cities, towns and localities across the region, and improve the wayfinding, so making it easier for people to use buses. It will provide new bus maps and on-street information, new roadside displays, new bus stops, flags and maps, and also battery-powered real-time information displays, particularly for those locations that are not as accessible to the electricity source. In addition, which is a slight departure from the Leeds package, this package will include a complementary package of behaviour change initiatives. So this is the kind of initiatives to encourage and support and help people to take advantage of the infrastructure that we are delivering. And this package will support the whole of the Transforming Cities programme, enhancing the benefits of the infrastructure to encourage use and take up of public transport and cycling and walking across the region. I think this package particularly supports our objective inclusive growth because the more vulnerable and socially disadvantaged groups are most reliant on our bus and active travel networks. And by improving connectivity from deprived communities to key facilities and employment and training opportunities, this project will kind of support that particular objective. Again, this package had a range of funding scenarios in the TCF bid, and it also is also supported by match funding from the local transport plan. So if we could just move on to the next slide, which is the summary of the recommendations. So the table that you should hopefully all be able to see summarises the key recommendations for decision by the Combined Authority as is set out in the papers pack. So each of the packages I've briefly introduced is set out along with the projects that will then fall out of those packages. So as I said, there's 12 schemes or projects that will be developed at outline business case or full business case and for delivery. Do you want me to go through this in detail, or do you just want me to kind of? I don't
think we need to. I think what we'll just do is pause and see if there are any further questions in terms of quantum or otherwise before perhaps just getting colleagues to approve that we recommend the Combined Authority to make the investments that are implicit in the papers.
So there's just a couple of points I wanted to highlight. So as I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, I think it was just shy of £12 million was approved back in June to facilitate the continuation of development of these projects because of the tight timescales that we're working towards. So you'll note that in some cases today's funding approval is set at zero. That's because they've already had that development funding approved, and the promoter hasn't indicated that they need any additional funding to get them to that next decision point. Other promoters have indicated that they require further funding to be approved at this point to develop their scheme to the next decision point. And in the case of the Bradford Interchange scheme, the amount requested today, which is 2.69 million, also includes provision for some site demolition and detailed building investigation works. I think you're all familiar with Bradford Interchange, and it's quite a complicated structure, and they need to do some quite detailed work before the designs are kind of taken to that next step. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. So are we content, colleagues, to approve these subject to, to recommend the CA approve these? I'm getting nods from people. Okay, and thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, so back to you, I think, Dave, and a combination of you and others to deal with the remaining approvals that we hopefully will give today.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I'm trying to get a screen to come up here. It's not doing what it should be doing. Right, okay. So we've gone through the Transforming Cities Fund schemes. I think the next project we want to introduce is the Corridor Improvement Programme Phase 2 delivery, and I think we bring James in. Is that right for this one?
Yep. Hi, Dave. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Ah, great.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. So, hi, I'm James Bennett, and I work on the Corridor Improvement Programme and also Bradford schemes at the Combined Authority. So, the report that's in front of you today, just to say, there's a brief summary on page 31, and then the main report is on pages 49 to 56. So, I'm starting on page 49. So just very briefly, the paragraph 6.4 just gives a little bit of background to the Corridor Improvement Programme. And just to let everyone know, it was initially set up as part of the Transport Fund back in 2017 and was allocated £125 million. It was split into 2 phases. Phase 1, £77 million, which has made good progress. Most schemes now working on their final business case, soon to start on site. So this report regards phase 2, of which there's £48 million allocated. So just to let you know, I know I came to this meeting a few months ago and you approved 650k to work on phase 2. So just to let you know that that work is now complete. So the strategic assessments and the strategic outline cases have been produced. We asked districts to supply corridors and proposals, of which we received about 15 entries. We scored those against the objectives, which many fit in with and are similar to the ones you've just heard from Fiona on the Transforming Cities. So as you'd imagine, reducing carbon, speeding up journey times, accessing people to jobs, etc. So overall, following scoring of the submissions, today in front of you, listed in paragraph 6.6, you'll see the proposal to take forward 5 schemes, that's 1 per district, in paragraph 6.6, and 3 reserve schemes, which are in paragraph 6.8. Just a little bit to say very briefly about the lead schemes. They were formerly LIPTIP schemes that are now coming into the programme, and they're a little bit further developed. So they've actually developed the outline business cases. So from this point on, the report really covers funding and requests for the other districts, so the other 4 core schemes, so Bradford, Calderdale, Kirklees, Wakefield, to progress. The lead schemes are progressing under their own separate approvals, and in fact, on the agenda today, later on the agenda, one of those is here today, the A660 Headingley Hills. So that was covered in paragraph 6.13, just to explain that about the leads outline business cases. So the benefits are shown in paragraph 6.16 and 6.17, as mentioned, things such as speeding up journey times, reducing carbon and carbon emissions, for example. So in paragraph 6.19, it shows overall to develop the 5 outline business cases, that's all the Bradford, Calderdale, Kirklees, Wakefield, and Wakefield in fact has 2. The second is a reserve scheme. So to develop those 5 to outline business case stage requires £3 million of funding. Across the whole Corridor Improvement Programme Phase 2, we're also requesting to draw down £1 million of contingency. That isn't allocated at the moment. It is contingency if the unexpected or something on the risk register comes to fruition. So overall, the recommendations that are listed in paragraph 6.26 are, the first one, that the schemes that outlined in phase 2 proceed through decision point 2 to develop the outline business cases. Secondly, that the £47 million allocation is reaffirmed, so it's given continued indicative approval. And today you're being asked if you could approve £4 million of that £47 million to develop 5 outline business cases. And finally, that the Combined Authority enters into funding agreements for those schemes with the districts. That's it, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Sorry to come in, Dave. Any comments from any colleagues before we move the recommendation? Are you happy to endorse the recommendation that we recommend to the CA that they approve, as James has very clearly set out for us? Yes, we have. Okay, back to you, Dave.
Okay, we'll come back to James in a few minutes on a further project from the Corridor Improvement Programme. Meantime, we'll go on to the Brownfield Housing Fund and bring Patricia and Rebecca in on this one, I think.
Hi, thanks, Dave. Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca Greenwood. I work in the policy team with Alan Rees. So I think it's the first time I've been to this committee, so nice to see you all. So just going to give an overview of the Brownfield Housing Fund strategic case, which we've got as part of the report today, which is slightly different to the strategic outline case that you would normally see, in that we've been allocated this funding directly, as I think Liz mentioned earlier on when she was talking about the Getting Building Fund. The Brownfield Housing Fund, in a similar way, was allocated directly to us as an emerging mayoral combined authority. So the overall national fund, Brownfield Housing Fund pot, is 400 million, and all mayoral combined authorities were allocated a per capita share of that funding on the 30th of June, which is where our £67 million came from. So we haven't had to put together a submission of projects or a bid to access this funding. It's purely an allocation that has come to us. And the reason I give that background is because we're bringing the strategic outline case without the full list of projects that will sit within the programme at this stage. This is because there is a spend profile obviously attached to the 67 million with £5 million of spend down for this financial year. We're keen to make sure that as projects come through that there isn't a delay in being able to assess business cases that come through on that, which is why we're bringing it at this point. We are actively working with officers across all the districts to identify projects, particularly those projects that can spend quickly, and are also seeking to look at where business cases need some extra assistance to be developed. So we are requesting, as part of the SOC, £5 million for development costs. Again, without repeating what Liz said about Getting Building Fund earlier, it's for very similar reasons in terms of capacity to develop those business cases and to develop what's needed across the projects that will form the Brownfield Housing Programme. So we are requesting a recommendation to the Combined Authority for us to get that. I think it's just worth just pointing out as well, recognising that it's going to be challenging to deliver. There's tight timescales again with this one, but it's very important, I think, for us reputationally as an emerging mayoral combined authority to be able to demonstrate that we can deliver on this sort of fund. And we do expect, as devolution progresses, we're likely to probably be allocated funding in a similar way to this moving forward in future years. So whilst we are obviously really excited and positive that we're getting some money to put into housing and regeneration across the region, we're really keen to work quickly with districts and officers and with members to identify those key projects that can deliver. I think the report probably explains the rest of the detail, but I'm very happy to take any questions or comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Any comments from anybody? Jane, come in.
Thank you. Just wanted to say this is really great. This is really, really good news for us in terms of post-industrial heritage. Every single district has got brownfield sites, and we have used up all the easy ones in terms of development for employment land and for housing. And we do need this additional help to be able to release, some of the sites that have got either land contamination or difficult access. So really welcome this, and we need to get on with it.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. And as you said, Rebecca, these are some of the benefits of a mayoral combined authority about to be, in terms of we get an allocation, we don't have to bid for it. One of the things that I'd like offline from here, not with my investment committee hat up, but more generally, is to perhaps have a bit of a helicopter view of the brownfield sites we've got across the city region, those which are designated for housing, could be designated for housing, against the housing challenge, because we've obviously got lots of approvals and still lots of sites, you know, so I'd just like to kind of see it in a spatial sense, not just out of curiosity more than anything else, both in employment and other terms. I think Councillor Groves wanted to come in.
It was just really to ask a question in terms of how we safeguard ourselves going forward. I'm taking it the 1 million contingency discussed at the transport and the last item was for escalating costs of materials as materials become more scarce. Are we building those contingencies in? And the other thing that I did think about in terms of, we will probably measure how many jobs we create, but I think it's worthwhile measuring across all of the schemes that we have, how many jobs we secure in this climate.
Yeah, good challenges. Thank you for that, Kim. So can I so we did just check that we're happy with the brownfield site development. Just looking, seeing oh, Rebecca, do you want to come back?
Yeah, just on Councillor Groves' point around contingencies, we will look at that on a project basis. I think is the best way to answer that at this point in time. There's a lot of work going on in terms of the projects that come through. We are currently working to identify those that can meet the programme objectives. So the start on sites of any homes that are delivered through Brownfield Housing Fund are required by the 31st of March 2025. So at the minute we're looking at those projects, but things like contingencies will definitely form part of the project assessments as we go through. And noted your point about the jobs secured as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Dave, back to you.
So fine, we're okay with recommendations on that one then, Roger, yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So next we're on to page 104 and bring James back in again for the A660 Headingley Hills scheme. And once James has done the introduction, there's also an item of correspondence that came through that we could discuss as well in terms of query around the project.
Sure. Thank you.
Hi, it's James here again. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Brilliant, thank you. So just a few minutes ago, I spoke about the Corridor Improvement Programme Phase 2. And I said that Leeds had 3 schemes which are being progressed. So they have one core scheme. We define core schemes as where we're today approving the development funding, but we do allocate out of the £47 million a construction cost. So Leeds has one core scheme and 2 pipeline schemes. I know we've always seen it's good to develop pipeline schemes because when new funding opportunities come up, we've heard a lot about being spade, shovel ready. So it's good to have those schemes under our belt. So today, this part of the report, which is on pages 104 to 108, is one of those such schemes. So it's the pipeline scheme for the Corridor Improvement Programme. Just as mentioned before, as these schemes were previously in LIPTIP programme, they're slightly more advanced and they've actually completed this one, the Headingley Hills scheme, the OBC. So traditionally in the assurance framework, at this point, they do come as a standalone scheme to be reviewed by yourselves. So that's why that's here today, sort of separate from the report that I just gave. Just to mention as well, you may have seen in the past under LIPTIP the whole corridor presented. So for example, the whole A660, due to there being different funding sources behind the scenes and different speeds that different parts of the corridor can progress, we're now sort of taking out sections to develop. But the whole team is still coordinated on the corridor as a whole. And for example, I'm still dealing with the same people at Leeds that were dealing with the LIPTIP element before. So there is consistency there. So paragraph 6.1 6.181 talks about the actual scheme itself. So will be a new bus lane just north of Hyde Park Corner, running out northwards to St Michael's Church, which is just before Headingley. There will also be a two-way segregated cycle lane. There is a map in Appendix 12 of the documents that have been sent out. Just to mention that paragraph 6.185 does talk about the benefits of the scheme. And I know, Dave, you mentioned about a query that had come in. I have spoken to some of the team this morning at Leeds, and the consultation has been taken into account in the latest designs that are proposed today for developing further to the full business case stage. So it does have a lot of benefits overall. It'll reduce overall journey times through that section of corridor. It'll speed up bus journey times. It'll promote bus use and cycling use. Also, overall, the modelling showing that it is beneficial on carbon, as in there are carbon savings as a result of the scheme. Paragraph 6.187 sets out the costs to do this. So the development costs are £825,000. If the scheme was built, the total cost, including the development cost, is £5.1 million. And just to mention again, I do want to say it's a pipeline scheme. So this funding, if given, will allow the scheme to develop over the next 6 to 9 months to the full business case stage. And if other funding then becomes available, it could move forward. But at the moment, we're not allocating actual build costs from SIP phase 2. Just to mention, there are many things on the horizon. For example, in phase 1 of SIP, Dawson's Corner has been put forward as a potential MRN DFT funded scheme. So we're currently consulting and engaging with the DFT. So if that gains programme entry, that will release £7, £8, £9 million back into the corridor improvement programme. So it would be really advantageous to have schemes such as Headingley Hills in development, as we can hit the ground running straight into delivery if other funding sources such as that come forward. So just to mention, yeah, the overall scheme would be available to develop in 2021 if funding was available. So in paragraph 6.192, the recommendations are, the first one is that the scheme can progress to full business case development. It does in point 2 mention the overall scheme would cost £5.1 million. So it identifies the costs there that would be needed should the scheme move forward. Approval 3 seeks approval to the development costs of £825,000 today. So that's the actual funding that you would be approving today to progress the scheme onto the next decision point, which is full business case. And decision 4 is to enter into a funding agreement between the Combined Authority and Leeds for the £800,000. So that's the report, Roger and Dave.
Can I just come in there, Roger? I just expand a little bit more about the item of correspondence that came in. It came in from the A660 Joint Committee, which is a group who look at various transport measures down that particular corridor. The key concern was that there'd been some consultation in 2018 around the scheme, and that there was a level of opposition to the measures from certain people. Speaking to the project team, they have said that some of these concerns have been taken on board through the design process. And the purpose of the next piece of work actually is to do more work on the designs and actually to do further engagement and further consultation to get to the point where we can hopefully get closer in terms of our thinking around what we need to do on this section of road, which has at times been controversial in the past, as I'm sure councillors are aware.
Thank you, Dave. Did Kim want to add anything? Don't need to, Kim, on this one before we perhaps move to it.
Yeah, I think for Leeds it's a really important corridor. It's one of those corridors that has high congestion. We need a rapid bus corridor down there, and we need to promote the modal shift. It's got a high student population. It's got it's a highly used corridor from Leeds to Otley. So yeah, I would be supporting for this corridor to be included.
Thank you, Kim. And just anecdotally, I remind myself of coming to Leeds in 1972 and finding myself in a hall of residence called Boddington Hall and thinking how busy the A660 is down to the centre of Leeds to the university. Anyway, some things haven't changed in nearly 50 years. Darren.
Sorry, just to make reference to the email that was referred to earlier from the A660 Joint Council. I'm saying we've all, I've had a copy, and I know that Councillor Jeffries has had a copy of that letter pointing it out. So I would respectfully ask that at least reference be made to it in the minutes.
Absolutely. Okay, are we happy then to for the recommendation to go up to the CA? I'm looking at, yeah, okay. Dave, back to you.
Okay, moving on. We're on to page 109 of the papers now. I think we're starting to get there. It's the enterprise zone of Langthwaite. Hopefully I've got Jackie online here who will introduce this at short notice. Is that right, Jackie? If she, I can't hear you yet. If she isn't on the line, I suggest we move on to the next item and Jackie will be joining us shortly.
Oh, hi,
Okay.
Dave. Sorry, can you hear me? I've been having catastrophic failure.
She's on the phone. Yeah.
Yes, we've got you now.
I'm on the phone. Sorry, I'm really struggling to hear. Are you on item 8 now? Sorry.
Oh no, sorry. I was talking about no, Jackie to do the EZs. So we're not on item 8 yet.
Oh.
Wrong, Jackie.
Wrong, Jackie. Apologies, everyone. Sorry, I'll be quiet.
Sorry, it took me a while to get logged into the Zoom there.
Yeah, I've got the right Jackie now. There we are.
Yes.
Okay, so we're on to the Langthwaite EZ item. Okay.
Thank you, Jackie.
Brief overview.
Yeah, so brief overview. Langthwaite EZ is part of the Enterprise Zones programme, which so it's part of the phase 2 site. It's situated at South Kirby and currently forms of land which would be an extension to an existing enterprise, an existing business park. The Combined Authority has very recently purchased the land that is subject to this business case, and through this business case we're seeking development funding to take us to full business case, and also funding to enable Wakefield Council to extend the roadway to provide access to the site, such that we can then, the plan ultimately post business case is to go onto the site, creating a further access road into the site and 2 development platforms to enable us to take those to market and seek a developer to develop those 2 plots out, thereby generating a capital receipt to invest in further development on site so that we can slowly take the site fully to market. Sorry, I was only asked about 2 minutes ago if I could join this, so I wasn't prepared.
That's fine, Jackie. I suppose, is there any questions around that, or do we move to the recommendations?
I was going to say, does Darren want to add anything to it? I mean, it's fairly self-evident, I think. We don't have to, Darren.
I couldn't add anything more to that wasn't already eloquently dealt with by the officer concerned. She's done a cracking job.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's very important, as you rightly said, Jackie, the phase 2 of our enterprise zones beyond phase 1, which obviously was at Aire Valley, right across the wider region to get employment opportunities. And
yes, absolutely.
Nearly 300,000 square feet of industrial and employment space in and around the Wakefield area is as important as it is anywhere else in these cities.
It certainly is, and this is an area which I think will benefit tremendously from, if we can get the high quality jobs on that site. I think that will be extremely good for this particular area.
And it's proximate to the production park facilities as well there, isn't it, as well, if I remember right?
It is, yes. They have they have expressed interest in potentially taking plots on this site. They currently own a piece of land just to the north, where they're working with a company that they're in partnership with on potential development there. Obviously, that will be their focus for now, but they have a far wider master plan that covers not only potentially plots on the enterprise zone site, but going further west as well, opening up with a private university, further business space, and I think the student accommodation type approach as well. That's a 10-15 year plan, which yes, we could be potentially involved with as well through this site.
And it's a further complementary to the whole Channel 4, the whole creative.
It is.
Agenda.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
quite, I think Production Park have quite an exciting proposition. It's in the very early stages of development, so there's a way to go on it yet.
Okay, I'm going to just look, Jane's there, just make sure with a thumbs up or otherwise that we're happy to make the recommendation. Yeah, we are. Thank you. Dave, back to you.
Okay, next we're on to page 114. I think we've got three more projects to go through, including this one. It's Halifax Walking, Cycling and Bus Transformation Package. It's one of the TCF schemes, and I'm going to get Adam Kendall-Ward to introduce this one.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dave, and good afternoon to yourself, Roger, fellow officers and councillors. Can everyone hear me okay?
Indeed.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So my name's Adam Kendall-Ward. I work in the Transport Partnerships team of the Delivery Directorate. I've been working on the Halifax Bus Station project for a number of years now. And just to bring everyone up to speed, really where we're at with the project, it is part of the Transforming Cities Fund. It's actually the most advanced component within that programme in terms of where it's at in the assurance pathway, really. The project's really looking to implement quite a transformational bus station for Halifax Town Centre and address what's been, a bus station that's gone into its current condition, really, and it hasn't had any significant investment for 30 years or thereabouts, and it's got a number of challenges and issues on the site which we wish to address. We're really looking to deliver a modern, environmentally friendly, fit-for-purpose building that has a central concourse facility. It's all enclosed, that adopts a design similar to other bus stations across West Yorkshire, such as Castleford and Huddersfield and the like, so kind of a drive-in, reverse-out facility there, and a facility that really serves as a catalyst for development within Halifax Town Centre and helps to support the realisation of the aspirations of the Halifax Town Centre delivery plan. And the key sites nearby to the bus station, one worth mentioning is the Trinity Sixth Form College, which is actually opening up this month, actually next week. They'll be welcoming students into there, and other redevelopment going on across the town centre, including Northgate House, the Northbridge Leisure Centre and the like there, and also to work and complement other projects happening within Halifax Town Centre, including the A629 project and aspirations of the bus strategy and the Bus Alliance as well. So the project's coming in at about 15.805 million, which has increased ever so slightly from last time it was presented to the investment committee, which was last summer. And the reason for that is we've gone through quite a couple of tweaks in the design. We've had a very successful engagement activity with stakeholders, members, and members of the public as well, and we've made some operational tweaks in terms of the layover provision, the access and egress arrangements, and significant enhancements to the green infrastructure and the environmental credentials of the building. We're looking to really deliver something that delivers quite a step change from an environmental point of view, and compared to what's there at the moment, with adopting elements such as a green living roof, green walls, and solar panels, PV panels, and delivering a bus station that's ready for the introduction of electric buses into the town centre through ducting and enabling work, and also working very closely with our colleagues in policy and strategy on making sure that it's ready for the selected standard, really, for the charging provision. by its very nature, the bus station will help to really deliver the climate emergency priority by helping to promote bus use going forward. We have got the initial impact that we've all recognised with COVID on the bus market at the moment, but we do see in the longer term things will stabilise. There's quite a lot of dependency within Halifax and Calderdale on the bus network, particularly for those that need it to access employment, education, training opportunities, as well as social value opportunities within the town centre, but also elsewhere across Calderdale as well, because the bus station does actually serve as quite an interchange between bus services and coach services. And we've really incorporated elements into the design to improve the integration with other sustainable modes as well, through better pedestrian links with the new trip generators which have been developed across the town centre, such as the Sixth Form College, the Northgate house development as well, which is just next door, and also to sites around the town centre, such as the Dean Clough Mill, the Broad Street Plaza, and Wool Shops just the south of the bus station. And we take on board certain recommendations that have actually been made by councillors. I believe Councillor Sculling suggested we incorporate real-time information, which is what we're doing now with the project, and also enhance cycle parking where we can on the site, and deliver something that does help to really reinforce the carbon agenda, and also the aspirations of the wider TCF, and supporting a strategy for the town centre and wider regional priorities, including the economic plan and the transport strategy as well. So really, for the investment committee, we're looking for your endorsement to recommend to the combined authority that the project proceeds to the next activity, activity 5, full business case, and also for your endorsement of the required funding that we're seeking, the 1.12 million, to really repay what we borrowed from the Plus Transport Fund to get the project where it's currently at, and also to fund the next stage of work. Really, we're calling it REBA Stage 4, and also to fund some early engagement with contractors. So we've got a much more coordinated joint effort, because there is actually quite a lot of work happening within Halifax Town Centre from next year, and we really want to make sure that there is a coordinated effort going on, and that we can continue the work that we've done on liaising with their highways teams, with our bus services teams, and with colleagues and bus operators as well, to make sure it is a very seamless transition as we're bringing all these projects forward. So this funding will help to secure that work going forward there, and get us to that next delivery stage, really. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the investment committee have, or take anything away with me today.
Okay, thank you, Adam, for that, and thank you for the name checks of all the various things in and around Halifax. And I guess as chair of the Peace Hall Trust, I'll just remind you of that international duel.
Of course, yeah.
It's in the great town of Halifax in Calderdale. Anyway, that was a cheap shot of mine, but it wasn't meant to be critical, just
no worries.
Otherwise. Jane, was there anything you wanted to add? Because obviously this is a very important thing to the overall renaissance of Halifax and Calderdale more generally.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And can I say that Halifax has other attractions as well as the magnificent Peace Hall. Adam's actually done a pretty comprehensive job of explaining. It makes it sound very easy and smooth. We've had quite a journey on this, and the plans are finally coming to fruition. And also, we were very lucky in terms of the consultation with the Civic Trust and with the public of getting that in before flooding and before lockdown, actually. And I can report that our sixth form college is now finished and is awaiting its first students. It looks extremely nice. And of course, on the commercial side, we have signed up Royal Sun Alliance to take the offices there. So I like it when a plan comes together, and this is in some ways the last bit of that end of the town. Really important to us. And as Adam knows, that I have nagged on some of the green features, but I was pushing at an open door, really, wasn't I? So I commend it to the committee. Sure.
Thank you very much, Jane. Anybody else want to make any further comments? Or are we happy to recommend to the CA approve the funding? Getting thumbs up and nods. So yeah, it's fine. Thank you, Adam. Shall we move on, Dave?
We shall indeed. We're on to the A61 North, which is a part of Leeds Public Transport Investment Programme. I've got Robert Mason from Leeds City Council, who's been waiting patiently to introduce this one. Can you take it away, Rob?
Thanks, Dave. Yes, as this is one of our LP TIP schemes, due to the prioritisation and over-programming of LP TIP, this corridor significantly reduced in size down to the point where we've got £4.4 million worth of schemes over 5 different junctions now. And there is an additional A61 North in James's SIP programme, which is one of the ex-LP TIP schemes we deprioritised. If you get conflicted by A61s, there are 2. The 5 schemes we've got left in LP TIP focus on Harrogate Road. You can see a map of them in Appendix 15 as part of the papers. Today's ask of the Combined Authority is we've been working through the development towards these. We plan to submit the full business case plus with costs next month. But we're seeking to unlock an extra £1 million from the Investment Committee today. Of that £1 million, 117 goes towards further development of the business case and works to date. 890,000 of that goes towards Moortown Corner, which LP TIP advanced earlier in the year as a supposedly quick win, but schemes that we were intending to deliver ahead of the ball. So the Moortown Corner works have just about finished on site. That was a new bus lane, a pedestrian crossing, and some changes to the local area to just make more walking cycling improvements. So that's already been delivered. So that's the part of the 890,000. The scheme's got a general BCR of 5.5, so it scores quite highly. I'm coming back to Investment Committee in a couple of months' time to seek unlocking the remaining 2.6 million to deliver the rest of the other 4 schemes in the future.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you, Rob. Kim, did you want to add anything before I ask him any questions? No. Okay. Are we happy to approve the recommendation? We are. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rob. Dave?
Okay, and the final one now for approval is on page 126, real-time bus information. We got Andrew Bradley on the call to introduce this one.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on board. I'm Andrew Bradley, Head of Customer Services at the Combined Authority here, and I'm bringing this paper to you about real-time passenger information. For those of you that are not familiar, this is the system that drives all of the information that we have at our real-time displays on street, online, and on social media channels, etc. Not just in West Yorkshire, but across the whole of the Yorkshire region. We're currently driving this information to about 2,500 bus stops, and that's growing by the day, as you'll know, through the investment that's been made through LIPTIP. So there are 2 main themes to the funding that we're seeking here, and they can be found at paragraph 6.261. So the first is around bus station real-time enhancements. So at the minute we have, for whatever reason, historical really, we have 2 slightly separate systems. One which is the main system that's been driving real-time across the region. The second is a specific system that's been driving the bus station equipment. That system is now obsolete. It's using software which is well out of date and some hardware that is well out of date as well. It's life expired in terms of the hardware. So when we need replacements for that hardware, it is basically a what can we cannibalize from other bits of equipment to make that equipment work? You cannot buy this equipment. So that needs replacing. And in terms of the back office, some of you may have been familiar with some of the hacking and cyber attacks that has happened previously in terms of old information and computer systems. And we run some of the same risks with our real-time kit that's operating at our bus stations. We need to make it right, and we need to make it right as soon as possible. So that's the first side of things. The second side of things is around a data standard that I won't go into massive detail on, but it's called TransExchange. It's the national standard that we use for exchanging bus schedules between operators and local authorities and other third parties who would use that information to push it out to the public through a variety of channels. At the minute, we have a very convoluted and rather painful system of checking various types of information, various streams of information that come through to us through various channels. We want to automate that basically, and this enables us to do that. So the total cost of this project is 360k, and we're requesting to move that to delivery now, for delivery by next summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Very sensible to me. to have something up to date rather than otherwise. Everybody looks like they're nodding. I think everybody agrees. So thank you for that, Andrew.
Thanks very much.
We'll be making that recommendation to the CA later this week. It's probably me that'll be doing it, I think, as well. I think that's covered everything that we need approval from the Invest Committee day, but I think we should just note in para 5.4 of the papers those other schemes that through delegated authorities have been moved forward. And I think we should record that. I'll just pause to see whether anybody wants to add anything. Dave, did you want to come back in or make any comments on those before we move to the last agenda item?
That was all I was going to flag there, Roger, that there were the ones about delegated authority for approval. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to all our colleagues, either on the call or who've been on the call for all of that. It was, as you say, Dave, quite a lot to go through, but all very important and important right across the city region. So we move to the last item, and Jackie Warren, I think, have been waiting patiently, even though she's had to come in by phone, to talk about our approach to meeting our climate emergency declared targets, but also making sure we're clear. And I don't want to use the words good and bad or ugly, but we're clear about some of the investments we made and their impact on that agenda, so that we're absolutely transparent about the things we need to do, both in terms of what we're going to invest in, but what we've already invested in to meet that 2038 target. So over to you, Jackie.
Thanks, Chair, and hi, everybody. Apologies for being on the phone. My IT seems to have completely let me down. So this paper really outlines some new work that we're just starting, and as Roger quite rightly said, this is all about strengthening our decision-making processes in light of the climate emergency. So to date, as this committee hears regularly, and today even, there is a range of activities already underway to tackle the climate emergency. But nevertheless, it is a significant challenge, one that requires everybody to take action, and also over a long-term period. But you'll see there in paragraphs 2.5, 2.6, there's some really good work already going on in this space. And you'll also see there from the paragraph the carbon emission reduction pathways work, which the Combined Authority is undertaking. So this is a really important piece of work that will help us to understand what are the key measures that we need to take between now and 2038 to meet that regional net zero carbon target, which was adopted last year. So some really, really important pieces of work going on at the moment at a kind of a regional level. However, to support the region to achieve its net zero carbon target by 2038, the Combined Authority last year in October 2019 decided to lead by example, so adopted a corporate approach to tackling the climate emergency. And this included things like a corporate policy, new corporate action plan, and really this was a program of work to say what we would do as an organisation to play our part in tackling the climate emergency. And as part of this, one of the other really important pieces of work was around this strengthening our internal decision-making processes and including the assurance framework. So again, in your papers there that you can see, paragraph 2.9 highlights some of the things that we have already been doing. However, it is fair to say that our current processes could be stronger and they could be more robust. Sometimes they are a little bit on the ad hoc side, and we certainly know that we can improve how we quantify some of our carbon emissions and other wider clean growth elements. So this piece of work is really around looking at how do we create a stronger, robust and quantified methodology and assessment to help ultimately, people like yourselves, the investment committee, to make decisions that are informed and you understand the carbon impacts on the project before you make those decisions. So what we're aiming to do with this work is to predict through a robust and agreed methodology, predict carbon emissions. We're also going to make sure that as part of the decision-making processes, we consider the impacts. And there might be really positive impacts, which is great, but there also might be some negative impacts. So where possible, we need to start to understand those and also try and mitigate them where possible. So this is really about helping, again, people like yourselves to make those more informed, balanced decisions going forward. So you can see there in paragraph 2.10 onwards, we've just recently commissioned this piece of work. It's a rather technical piece of work, hence why we need to commission it. The work, and I'll give a very quick summary, but Appendix 1 gives you the full details. The work includes reviewing best practice in terms of carbon assessments to date. It also will review our current assurance framework and how there are some really good things in there that we're doing, but also some areas for improvement around carbon. Then we'll look at and develop a new robust carbon assessment. And we'll also look at, as part of that process, at how we then embed it into the assurance framework and also other decision-making processes across the combined authority. And then the final key part of the work is then training. So training and giving all of our internal staff the ability to understand the process and how to calculate carbon emissions in an agreed methodology, but also with our project sponsors and our local authority partners, making sure that they understand the process and it's relatively easy, straightforward for them to use. The other element, and again, I think Roger alluded to it as part of this commission, is that we are really keen to understand our current projects, our current capital projects and their carbon emissions, so that we, again, for those that are still at a point where we can influence, so the aim is to understand where we might be able to improve carbon emissions and reduce them where possible. So the other piece of work is looking at our 180 odd plus projects and understanding the carbon emissions. So it's a significant piece of work, and actually a really important piece of work for the Combined Authority in terms of its wider programme around tackling the climate emergency. You'll see in paragraph 2.11 that McDonald have just been appointed to do this piece of work, which is great. We have been delayed through COVID, and as you can imagine, the processes that we've had to go through. But our aim is to come back to you probably in November with some initial recommendations, the findings of the reviews that I talked about, making suggestions on how we can start to embed some of this into the assurance framework. And then what we'd like to do by the end of the year is then come back to you again with the actual proposed methodology and the carbon assessment tools, that's the things we will actually use. And then the plan being early in 2021, we'll apply that methodology to those existing projects that I was talking about. And then the plan would be by the end of June to then roll out the methodology and the supporting training. So yes, we will come back to you regularly on that. And ultimately we'll take the final preferred options to the combined authority. I think that's all I wanted to say, Chair, for now. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Jackie. Obviously a very important thing. And as I said in my remarks, it's not only about looking forward and the projects going forward, it's also looking back and learning some lessons and also saying what is it we can do and being very transparent about the scale of the challenge, because there is a balancing act between the absolute environmental aspects with the economic, with the social and all of those other things, and to try and do that in a prescriptive as well as independently evidenced way, I think will be really enhancing of all the things that we all aspire for our wider community. Does anybody else want to add any comments before we just note this report? And obviously we'll be hearing more about it going forward. Anybody want to add anything further? Okay, Dave, I think we're just about complete. Slightly after my an hour and a half plan, but to cover 15 projects and in the way we have, I think we've done pretty well. So unless there's anything anybody else wants to add, I see Jane's gone off mute. I will, after she's spoken, bring the meeting to a close. Jane.
I'm just going to say thank you, Chair. That was really quite a challenging agenda. Thank you for taking us through it.
Thank you also.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said, Jane, because my internet went down.
It was basically thank you, Chair.
Oh no, that's fine. No, thank you all, and particularly thank you, Dave, and officers. It's for me, it's always exciting to hear about these things and then be able to put the pieces together, how they improve all of the places, and it's kind of, I guess, why we're all in this agenda. However, where we got to here. while we're in it. So thank you, and onwards and upwards, I guess. So without any further ado, I'm going to wish you good afternoon, good evening, and see you all soon.
Bye. See you all later.
Bye.